I'll start the recording. We're in your lovely hands.
Okay, thank you so very much. So the name of this presentation, of course, uh, forgive me, I did not mean to get out, is entitled Living Clutter-Free, Creating Space for Clarity, Joy, and Fulfillment. And we really can't talk about, clutter without really having an understanding of how we become to be clutterers, hoarders, or collectors, or persons that may live in squalor. But in order to talk about that, we have to talk a little bit about obsessions and compulsions. But before we can even get into that, it's helpful to frame the context of our discussion today. So as you know, our society is becoming more increasingly aware of our living environment. And that's evidenced by the emerging lifestyle of minimalism. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with that concept of minimalism, but it's the desire to live with just what we need versus what we want. And as you know, we are constantly inundated with commercials and infomercials and creative influencers and countless online advertisers sharing with us all the products that they sell, the services that we must have to really feel good about ourselves. And before you know it, we find ourselves buying all of these things that we see and that they're selling to us. And that's because we live in an environment or a culture of consumerism and capitalism. So that also helps to fuel that desire. But however we may come to obtain those things that we have, they've become a big, huge part of our lives, having to acquire things and to hold on to things. But perhaps having all these things in our lives may, in fact, be having a psychic impact, and that it may be interfering with our ability to have full clarity of mind and distracting us from the serenity that we need in life. So the purpose of this particular presentation is to kind of talk about that. So I'll give some definitions of obsessions and compulsions because that frames this dialogue. And then we'll discuss the difference between being a collector, a clutterer, a hoarder, or someone who squalors. But the bulk of our discussion today will be looking at clutter in everyday living and the mental and emotional effects of clutter and strategies for living clutter-free. So the first thing we need to understand is what are the essential features of obsession compulsive disorder? Well, they are recurrent obsessions or compulsions that are severe enough to become time consuming. So to be obsessed is usually in the thought process because we're constantly thinking of something over and over and over and over and over again that we really can't think of anything else. And the compulsion is our ability to have to do something and to do so excessively where it becomes unreasonable in terms of our ability to control it. An example of that may be chronic hand washing, for example. So you have the compulsion to do that. So that's essentially, in a nutshell, obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, I shared with you a little bit about the differences between the two, but I think it's important to just, elaborate a little bit on the thoughts and the impulses and images that become intrusive thoughts in our minds. And the key here is that they cause market distress. It causes us distress when we're obsessing. And for the compulsions that result in repetitive behaviors, I shared with you the hand washing, having to put things in certain order and constantly checking up on something. You have activities like counting, repeating words, this can, we use this to help to reduce anxiety, but in fact, it really causes anxiety But these compulsions, this act to do, allows us to achieve pleasure and in most cases, gratification. And the person who is compulsive really can't help themselves. And unfortunately, that ends up causing them to have some challenges in living life. So going to the next screen, excuse me. This is an example here of a hoarder. So a hoarding environment. You can see there's so much, here in this couple's home that they can't even, find a way to live comfortably. So let's talk about the difference between what a hoarder is, someone who squalors, what a collector is, and someone who clutters. So a hoarder is someone who accumulates items and things that are carefully guarded for their preservation and future use. Someone who hoards obtains them and they do not have a specific theme. They're usually many different types of things that they're collecting. The items that they are acquiring are not acquired in a planned fashion. As a matter of fact, the acquisition of these items tend to be excessive and can be obtained from anywhere, any place. And they could be items that they found laying around on the street, or items that someone has given them, or items that they have purchased, or items that are free. And typically the appearance of the home is usually so disorganized that the items that they have in their home are spread out in different places throughout their home, their living room, their dining room, their kitchen, and it prevents those particular living spaces to be used in the way that it was intended. Efforts to get rid of those items that they acquired can cause the person, the hoarder, tremendous distress. And the spending may also cause them excessive distress, spending to buy these things and accumulate these items. And they also cause distress amongst the family. And not to mention, this creates an environmental hazard for the person that is collecting these things. So that's the definition of a hoarder. So I want to move to the definition of squalor. Now you can see here the difference of squalor. Now squalor, if you're living in squalor, that does create a public health condition. And of course, this is unsanitary, and it's just not good for one's living hygiene. So what is the difference again between being a hoarder, squalor, collector? Well, a squalor is someone who is squalid and has no intentional saving or acquiring of these items. It's built up to instead, they have these items and essentially it's neglectful. They have no ability to remove them. Their home environment is a state of disrepair. And of course, this causes them distress. Now, this could be people who are homeless. These could be people who may be living in their homes, but they just allow all of these items, and for lack of another word, junk, to just collect, and collect. And it becomes a haphazard way of existing, and it does create a public health problem. And it causes, distress, and perhaps the person's mental functioning, they may not be aware that they're living under those conditions. And of course, that's when we have to call the authorities to come in and to remove a lot of those items. So that's squalor. So now we get to look at what a collector is. Now, a collector is someone who acquires items that have a particular theme, coins, comic books, etc. And these items are acquired through planned searches. They are mainly purchased in, a limited number. I don't know how many of you have things that you collect. I used to be a collector of albums, and I have a whole lot of albums that I've collected over the years, and I have them neatly stacked in crates. Now, I don't know if I should be putting them in crates, but that's what I have them in. You have others who are collectors of coins and what have you, but usually a person who is collecting these items bring about a pleasurable effect. They have a positive impact, and the collection of these items do not cause them financial stress, nor does it impair their work life or social life. So that's being a collector. Now we get to being what a clutterer is. This is an example, this photo here, of someone who has a lot of clutter. Now, this is just one example of clutter. So a clutterer may acquire items that may or may not have a specific theme. And the items aren't necessarily acquired in any planned fashion, and the acquisition is not excessive. And that's the key difference between a hoarder and a clutterer. It's not excessive. And disorganized clutter is generally located in storage places, like our attic, our basement, our shed, garage, etc. And it may also be in living spaces, but it doesn't prevent the spaces from being used appropriately. The items may cause us some mild distress, but generally they do not have a broad or lasting impact. Like our finances aren't impacted by it. We're not going broke because of it. We're still able to go to work, we're still able to have a social life. So this isn't what we would call a mental impairment. This is just part of everyday living. I'm sure there are a few of us who may have clutter in our living environment and perhaps in our work environment. So when we clutter, it does have an impact on our psyche. So in addition to the clinical definition of what a clutterer is, we also tend to hold on to those items that we place a high value on, or that have particular meaning in our lives, or that we are attached to. For example, for those of us who are parents, we may be holding on to the first shoes that our infant or maybe our 1-year-old or 2-year-old ever had, or we may be holding on to trophies for those of us, again, that are parents, that our children won, and maybe in arts and culture, perhaps performances, or maybe if they were athletes, we may be holding on to that. And our children are grown out of the house, but we still may have their trophy. Perhaps our first love letter that anyone has given us, and we may be holding on to that. Or maybe we're holding on to documentation of our loved ones who may have passed away. And it might have been, critical to have that documentation at the time that we had it, but maybe now, we may not need it in the way that we did before. Clutter also interferes with our ability to think with clarity. It serves as a distraction and interrupts our thoughts. We are unconsciously, use our eyes to fixate on particular objects, that allow our minds to think freely. For example, I don't know if any of you have ever gone into someone's home and say there's a lot of pictures on the wall, and you sit there and you're looking at all the different pictures. My goodness, all these pictures here. And they may be beautiful pictures, but they may be all crammed together. Essentially what that means is that the eyes don't have a chance to rest. And when you're not able to rest, then your mind can't think clearly. You're distracted by what you see. So, ideally, the less that you have to distract you, the better that you're able to think clearly. So, some of the things we hold on to, we might want to think of that. Clutter also creates stagnation and prevents opportunities to replace, update, enhance, or alter one's living environment. So, for example, if there is a plant stand that you saw in the store that you think might enhance your living space, you probably can't purchase it because you really don't have the space to put the plant stand, because wherever you put something, you may have to move something out so that you have room to put it. And for those of us who have hobbies that we enjoy, we may have magazines that we've collected over the years, or our favorite hobby or recipes that we have for hobbies. I'm not sure the different types of hobbies, but for those of you who paint, you may have canvases, that you have stacked. You may have paint and different paint brushes, and some of the paintings that you've painted, that you've accumulated, but have not yet found its place. And so they may be piled up. So we may have piled all this up with the intention of doing something with it in the future, but might not have gotten around to it. So, again, clutter contributes to that. Now, for those of us who like fashion, and, I can't think of anybody who, doesn't like fashion. For those of us who love to dress, there seems to never be enough closet space to accumulate, our clothing needs. And this is for both our fashionistas and our fashion bros. So in looking at what we accumulate in our closets, one of the things we try to do when we're looking for a new home, at least it's most common among the women that I know, and friends of mine, is that when we're looking to buy a new home, or if we're looking to move into another apartment, the first question we ask ourselves is, how much closet space does it have? We want as much closet space as we possibly can get to store all our things. But how many suits and dresses, do we actually need? And how many of us can fit in them? I'm speaking for myself here. I'm not speaking for anybody else, when you have different sizes of clothes, so that takes up room. And when you're, just to add, when you're residing in a cluttered environment, it takes up the airflow in the living space, and the air can't properly circulate. Now, living in a current COVID environment, air circulation is really critical to, making sure that the air is clean. Also, in addition to the closet, if you have items that are on top of tables, if you walk around, you may accidentally bump into an item, and it may fall and it may break. So again, with the clothes, the jeans and blouses and dresses, skirts, suits, cocktail attire, all of these things we have, we may not necessarily need all of those things, and when it comes to shoes, we have so many different types of shoes, sandals, flip-flops, open, closed shoes, slippers, stilettos, loafers, mules, how many of those shoes do we actually need? And for our men, they're all the tennis shoes, the athletic shoes, the Nikes and Adidas and all the white tees and sweatsuits, we can kind of look at those items and begin to say, well, do we really need a sweatsuit in every kind of color that's the same style? Or can perhaps someone else use those items and we can share that with someone who needs it? So, clutter. When you don't have sufficient living space, you can feel claustrophobic, restrained, and crowded. So you may become easily agitated or irritable and may not connect directly to your cluttered living space. And when I say may not connect, you may not be able to connect it directly to your cluttered living space, that you may not realize that all these things that you're surrounded by in terms of clutter is really interfering with your ability to enjoy your environment. So that's really important to look at clutter in that way. You may also find yourself spending time away from your home because it may not feel as homey as you would like, so that's a challenge as well. And you may be inclined not to have gatherings at your home, out of fear of embarrassment because you have your share of clutter, or invite friends over. And of course, the pandemic notwithstanding, that can certainly be a concern. So one of the things we want to look at if we're looking to eliminate clutter is, what are some of the strategies we could consider? Well, one of the strategies, according to studies, is the first thing that we may want to look at is, do we have the ability to live within our means? Meaning, should we let the size of our living environment dictate the stuff that we should have instead of it being the other way around? Instead of us wishing for a larger closet, perhaps we can pare down our attire, pare down the accumulated shoes and items that we have, just to put what we need in the closet so that the closet isn't overflowing and everything is nice, neat, and organized. They also recommend that we purge often. Set aside some time, a few times a year, to go through all your things and get rid of those things you don't use anymore. You'll feel much lighter in doing so. Everything should have its place. Have a place for everything. We've always said that. Everything should have a place and everything should be in its place. So take advantage of storage containers, which can be neatly placed in unoccupied areas to store those knickknacks that, you desire to keep. Also, don't underestimate the importance of the junk drawer. Now, sometimes every junk drawer tends to be a junk drawer where we just throw everything in it, but there should be a designated drawer in your household that you can throw all the little things, your pens, your tape, your twist ties, whatnots, instead of trying to agonize where to put those things. And you only need just enough for some of the necessary chores or maybe things you need to get to fix up around the house. Ideally, we'd want to become a habitual putter aware. That is, before we can allow those things to pile up and accumulate, let's, maybe have a container at the door where you're liable to get all of your mail, and you could just start tossing that in that container and doing away with that container. Or, just as soon as you, pull an item out, put it away right away. Very important. That's really important that we put things in their proper space. Store things where you use them. One of the things that's really important, is that if you have a place where you put, your favorite cup that you like to drink out of, it's important that you put in a location in the kitchen where you can readily access it. So be intentional about where you place things. If you have to put it far away, it's less likely that it will be in its proper place when you need it. Also, stop clutter before it enters your home with the container that I talked about, and ideally to go paper-free. So if you're not already doing so, switch to online digital magazines, bill-pay journals, books, etc., for those important documents that you need. And if you can, if it's within your budget, pay for a cloud drive storage. Scan your documents and upload them to your cloud storage, and that would save you, some space. Now, my favorite thing about being clutter-free is that understanding that life is all about experiences, not necessarily what we own. Sometimes we get caught up maybe in keeping up with the Joneses. We want to have that nice car or this nice technology device, or we are replacing our phone every 2 years, In an environment of consumerism, again, we're just bombarded with everything that we must have to make our lives happy and to make us happy. And as the studies show, things don't make us happy. It's about how many experiences can we have. And if this COVID pandemic hasn't showed us anything, it has showed us the importance of social relationships. It has shown us the importance of time spent with those that we love. It has shown us what quality time is. And, this gives us an opportunity to kind of take a look at what's really important to us. Also, lastly, we're not perfect beings. So this is, it's a journey. It's not anything that happens overnight. We may not be able to start this journey right away. We may not be able to be clutter-free right away, but we can just try if that's a path we'd like to take. And if we don't do that well, that's okay. Nobody's home is perfect. Those homes that we do see in Architectural Digest, they have interior designers who come in and just make those homes super perfect. And, people are, trying to have those homes, but, everybody has clutter, everybody lives with clutter. I use that term, very, very loosely. So we can, do what we can to try to be as organized as we can. And, if we don't get it right, that's okay. We can forgive ourselves and we can try again, and start over again. So that pretty much concludes our clutter presentation. I would just like to thank Mrs. Mary L. Calhoun for the invitation and the suggested topic of clutter. And I would like to thank everyone who's participating on this call, but particularly the leadership of the Los Angeles County African American Employees Association for inviting me to present for Black History Month, and all of you. And I guess we can open it up for questions if we have time.
We do have time. We're great on time. So participants, members, friends, loved ones, please go ahead and either raise your hand so that you can be recognized and unmute to ask your question. And if you don't feel comfortable asking out loud, you can do so in the chat. We'll go ahead and stop your share, and then we'll be able to see those that are here today. Any questions? Any hands raised? No one? No one? Oh, I see 2 hands. Great. We'll start with you, Miss Dory Spencer.
Hi, I like to say, how do you address a loved one who may be a hoarder and you don't really want to hurt their feelings about what they're doing because their things mean so much to them?
Yes.
Yeah, it's real to them. So you can't, just like impede on them, like, you need to throw this away, throw this away. How do you approach those type of people?
Great question.
Dory, I think that's an excellent question. It is an excellent question, and it is something I deal with regularly in my area of work in serving an older population. Well, the first thing you want to make sure is that the items that they have is not impacting their living environment where they cannot move around. Are they using their living room and their dining room and kitchen appropriately? If they are, then we may not necessarily need to say anything just yet. But if they have so much stuff that you can't even get into the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, they're using the bathroom, every inch of the house is filled with so many things that it's not usable, then that's a public health issue. And when it becomes a public health issue, it's a safety issue. And then we have to let them know that because this is a health and safety issue, that, the authorities are going to, come in and clean out everything. So perhaps, we can sit down and go through this together of what's important and what's not important to help clear some things out.
What if it's not that bad towards a health and safety issue yet, but it's stuff like clothes, what, like you can't sit on the couch when you go over the dining table. It's not, where you can sit and have a meal. It's stuff everywhere. And it's even to the point where they bought sheds to go outside to put clothes that they don't want to throw away. So, I mean, the garage is full, the sheds are full, the inside, the closets, everything is full. You can walk around, but it's just stuff.
Dory, I would have the conversation and say, negotiate with them, but it starts with this is not healthy for them, and it doesn't allow for a safe environment completely. And if you can work with them to maybe, clear up one area. It's just incremental in steps because we want to work with them. But it takes planting the seed and being consistent with them until finally they give in and say, okay, well, I'll get rid of this much. It just may be about a few things, but that's a start to get them on track of
Yeah.
getting rid of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a
Anita?
little bit at a time.
Hi. My question is, because I was listening to you say like the attachments and stuff you have to things, and I do have some of those attachments, but how do you break those attachments? Because like the other day, I really have been trying to declutter my whole house, just downsizing because it's just me. But I started out, throwing stuff away. And next thing you know, I'm putting stuff in a pile that I'm not throwing. So once I actually finish, now I got two piles of stuff that I've actually kept that I was trying to throw away. And then when you look at what I threw away, it's just like a little bit. And I'm kind of noticing that every time I try to do that, it's happening the same way. So how do you kind of like break that where you could just actually say, no, just get rid of it? Because I even bought a big garbage bag one day and I threw everything in it. And next thing you know, I started finding myself, oh, I shouldn't have threw that in there. So that's where the two piles wind up coming back out of it.
Anita, that's a great question. First of all, discarding items is a process. It is a process. It's, you have to take that first step. But one of the things that I recommend, and I sit down with my older clients, is the first thing I ask them is, how does that particular item help you to live now? So that I'm trying to show them if this is something that they can live with or live without. And, I've had the opportunity to work with clients who have lost everything. When I worked with clients who lost things in Katrina, when I've worked with clients who've lost things in, other storms and hurricanes out there in Texas, I forget that Hurricane Harvey. I had clients and a few family members whose homes flooded, and not to mention clients who've lost things in fires. The bottom line is that when you lose everything, you realize that you can still live without those things. So what I try to do is to connect them to the value. So what I would do, Anita, with you, if you and I were, working together, I'd ask for each piece of paper, how does that value, is this something you need to live your life now? Why is it that you're holding on to that? And if it's something you're holding on to, can we take a picture of it and put it up in the cloud storage? And we go step by step by step until you only have what you absolutely need versus what you want to keep.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm gonna definitely try that technique because I'm like I said, I'm not finished, but I just noticed that, and when I noticed, I start, I was like, okay, you got two piles. I just stopped. I didn't even do anything else. So I'm definitely gonna try that. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Perfect. So we do have time for maybe one more. Is there anyone else? So there's one question, and I don't know if you still know this. I know that you did announce that you retired from county service, and wanted to let you also know that we have a retiree committee. Do you know that? The Los Angeles County African American Employees Association, LACAA, has about 6 or 7 categories of membership. Retiree is one of them. We'd love to have you. But the question is, what help does DMH offer its clients having hoarding issues? Would you happen to know?
Excellent question. Now, when I was there, now I haven't been in DMH since 2017, and we're already in 2022. But when I was there in 2017, they had their older adults administration. And in their older adults administration, they had specialists and experts with the knowledge of hoarding, because DMH was also over, I believe, the conservatorship program. So they have the expertise there. If you would just give them a call, and I'm not sure how they're constructed now. I understand they've undergone some changes, but whoever is the lead person for older adults and maybe countywide older adults, that person could probably point you in the direction of who the expert is now to assist with hoarding.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and have the individual double check with DMH to see what services they do have. I want to ask the question of everyone before we offer our opportunity drawing.
Delora, can
Yes.
I just make a comment? Thank you for
Sure.
that, Yolanda, but actually, the reason why I was able to connect with you was because I had to go outside of DMH. They no longer offer that hoarding program. As a matter of fact, they directed me to a 1-800 number, a hoarding, and it turned out to be the Hoarding Show. You know, where you see Hoarding Buried Alive, and his name is Corey, and the producer. So I went on I went on mental health's older adults program. I tried to contact those numbers. They are both defunct. So they no longer offer it, unfortunately.
Well, the Area Agency on Aging, I know the county has an aging program. They should definitely have that information.
Okay, I just don't want people to get the same frustration, because, you know, DMH, I tried a couple of numbers and one number finally just referred me to that hoarding show.
Right.
So DMH doesn't have the answer.
Right.
No worries. I can share some contacts with you offline, Mary L, and you can
That's
share
great.
that with the LACAA members.
That's great. Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay. So what category did we find ourselves in? I know that at the beginning, there was some strategy shared. Are you clutter? You're a collector? Are you a hoarder? Just interested to see what categories that we find ourselves in this morning or this afternoon. Anyone want to share?
I'm a collector hoarder.
Seems that many of us are clutterers. There's someone over here saying that they are a collector hoarder.
I am.
Somebody turn that video, they mute.
I am a collector hoarder. I like to collect shot glasses and other little items as I travel and come back and don't have really anything to use them for.
So we'll get you some help offline. There is an emotional hoarder and family collections. So thank you everyone for participating. But before you leave for today, we do have an opportunity drawing. Miss Mary, would you share with the attendees what that is?
Thank you so much. I'm excited to offer this to you. Yolanda so graciously agreed to include as part of her presentation a one-on-one consultation with one of you scheduled later that her schedule allows. And what we're going to do is we're going to ask everyone who wants a chance to win the consultation to put in the chat 3 strategies for dealing with clutter. And the first one to get 3 strategies, that'll be the winner.
I'll help you monitor the chat, Miss Mary.
Okay.
No
Can anyone benefit from a free consultation?
believe you all can. As do I need this?
So take your time and think about the 3 strategies that she had 10 strategies. So think about which three strategies really spoke to you in dealing with clutter.
So at this time, we have one response, so we'll go ahead and share that one. It is from Mrs. Anita. She said, the ask, do I need this, was one of the strategies, and put papers in cloud.
So do you have one more, Anita?
Go through your closets every year. Sounds like she has 3.
That's it. Okay, congratulations.
So Anita, if you could please we will need your contact information so that we can put you in contact with Miss Yolanda and Miss Mary, and they will arrange for the delivery of your opportunity drawing. I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this Lunch and Learn. Remember that this just kicked off our series for Black Health and Wellness. More things are coming. But before you leave, please make sure you take out your pen or your phone with your calendar and write down a couple of save the dates. The first one is next Thursday evening. We'll be installing the 2022-2025 Officers Board, and we have an awesome program that will be presented to you all. And then, because we are all about professional development, we will have our very own exams workshop Saturday, March the 12th. Saturday, March the 12th. We got to get you ready for the many opportunities that are coming your way. Thank you for your membership. Thank you for your time. And remember, Black history is every day. Have a great one.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Yolanda. I'll be
Thank
speaking to
you.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
you
Thank you so
all.
much, Mariel. Bye-bye.